you renting out a room or Airbnb in your home at all? The Supreme Court of Florida may have just given you some really bad news. Good morning. I'm Brenden with the Homes in Orlando team, and joined as always by Joe from Appli Home Loans. Good morning.
Good morning. That you're gonna hit us with that level of like, dun dun dun, like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I almost missed this. I was catching up on news articles from Florida realtors and read this. I'd been kind of following the case because I seen it a couple months ago that was going to the Supreme Court. Give you a little background of the case, just to put it all in perspective. There was a gentleman in Sarasota who had, I believe, bought his home, like mid 80s, 86 or 87. And he had actually, at that time, broken it up and rented out rooms within the home, basically turning it into a boarding home, right? And the county property appraiser found out that he was doing this in 2014. So what the property appraiser did was, the law allows him to go back 10 years and collect back taxes.
Wow, that's no fun.
Okay, so what he did is he said, okay, I've calculated roughly that 15% of your home is not being used by you. Therefore, that 15% is not homesteaded any longer. So they had to go back, recalculate all the taxes. On the portion of that 15%, he actually did a 10% increase per year because it's non-homesteaded. That portion is non-homesteaded. So the gentleman ended up owing for that 10 years roughly about $7,000 in back taxes. So what he did is he paid it, but then he came back and he sued the property appraiser for that money back. And this has been going through the courts now for a couple of years. And the lower courts actually ruled that, yes, he is allowed the full homestead, because it was a, quote, single family home. They were looking at the terms of the home, what the home was, quote, classified as. And the Supreme Court came back last Thursday, actually, and said no, that the property appraiser has done it correctly. And within the statute, it does allow him to take that percentage and actually classify it as non-homestead and calculate your taxes off of that. So I'm looking at this going, wow, this could create a really interesting situation throughout the entire state of Florida.
Yeah, because Airbnb, that whole renting a room, like, that's huge now. Like, there's a lot of people that are subsidizing their income with that.
Yes. Yeah. My brother's a great example. He moved down here, got a job, wasn't sure where he wanted to live. He rented a room that was advertised, happened to be on Airbnb, and actually lived at the residence for 2 years. So technically, the way I read it, according to this court ruling, is she could actually be responsible for a different amount of taxes. And the property appraiser could go back on her for however long she's had it. Again, statute allows up to 10 years. Go back and adjust all of her taxes for those 10 years. I guess the big question is, and I'm going to try and reach out to Seminole County and Orange County property appraiser and find out, hey, what are you going to do with this ruling? Because do they really have the resources to go through and look at everybody's address?
And I think that's the key. Is I feel like they open up themselves for a bigger can of worms if they pick and choose, right? Like, oh, well, we found out about this, so we are. But it's gonna cost so much money, and if they're gonna take the time and money, they're coming after everybody.
They got to go after everybody. you have to quote equal distribution of the law.
Yep.
But I was surprised not more people brought this out news-wise, because I get clients I talk to every day. Oh, I can rent out a room Airbnb. Oh, I can rent out a room. Just like you said, a lot of people do it to subsidize. And then here's a good question: is accountants, the savvy accountants, always tell you, oh, if you got an LLC, rent your house to yourself for like your business meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote Augusta rule allows you to rent your house up to 2 weeks. Okay. So if I rent my house for 2 weeks to my company, do I then lose my homestead for the whole house? Or do I lose it for that 2 weeks? How do you calculate that?
Yeah. Well, and I saw that, like, what part of that article, and one of the people in the state, right? Like Senate, like Supreme Court said that, well, use of home, they talked about like use of home for work, right? Mm-hmm. And that tax write-off. And they said, oh, but you're still the individual using it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that like goes, okay, well, then where does that play? But like you said, well, what if it is your business? Like it's one thing if it's like a Schedule C, like that's okay. But then if you're in a partnership, now it's not. Like I feel like this ruling is very, very troublesome. And in essence, I think it's one of those things where it went where it did, right? Mm-hmm. And the guy that they went after, he's dead, right? Like didn't he die in like 2015 or something like that?
I'm not sure.
It's his estate that they're going after now. So it's all been tied up afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm sitting here and I was like, they felt it was so important that they get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but why? And it's like,
I understand why when you thank God the decision was only 19 pages. Because when you actually read the decision, there were different property appraisers were reading the law differently. So in this county, they were treating it this way. In this county, they were treating it this way. This county, they were treating it this way. So, at some point, the higher ups got to say, no, this is how we actually treat it.
Okay. So now we go to that level, right? And it's like, okay, so now we basically have to like, not every county is able, like, has the funds and resources in place. So now they're going to need state funds to help assist. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, could this be hey, this is how we're going to end up being a detriment? And I say detriment, could it possibly lead to a greater change of homestead exemption as a whole? Like, could it in theory be the first domino in an effort to potentially be like, you know what, homestead doesn't work anymore in Florida? And are they potentially wanting to say homestead doesn't work in Florida because Florida is now what? In the first time since 1954, we're the fastest growing state, right, in population. Yeah. But we're the number 3 biggest state already. We're one of the biggest already. Like, so now all of a sudden we're the fastest growing, and we've seen value skyrocket, and you see all of this stuff, right? And when I look back at this, when this all kind of happened was the last time prices went up in 2008, 2009, right? Like that's when it all started before, right? So they saw tax revenue and all this. And could they be taking approach to sit there and be lawmakers at the top going, we're losing billions in tax revenue?
That's the question, because you look at, sometimes when we're working with houses, that the people who've been in their house for 20 years and you've got a new client and they're very close on that DTI, and all of a sudden you look at the taxes and the taxes are sitting at $800, where if the year after, even with the homestead, it's going to jump to say $3,400, $3,500.
Yeah.
It's getting them in the house. And okay, now what happened if those people had used portion of their house for a rental purpose, and they go back, and now all of a sudden, guess what? it jumped to $2,200. And the county's got to be kind of looking at this going, because you look at the Disney area, Polk County, Osceola County, Volusia County. There are a lot of places that people will rent out their houses maybe for a week or two. They advertise it.
Yeah.
Is the county going to start paying someone to monitor the Facebook marketplaces, the Airbnbs, the Vibros?
Dr. Phillips area, you got the Arnold Palmer, like people are renting out their whole house for a week.
Yep.
But they're making $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 in that week because they got a 5-bedroom house and on the golf course. Like that's a lot. Like, and that's a big change there. What makes more sense with this? I could see, and this is me just like big idea. Like I could see them, and how you have like 25,000, you get, if it's Homestead, you get the bonus to 50 for certain tax rates, right? But then the big savings, what keeps that tax revenue down, or that value that keeps is the Save Our Homes, the 3% cap. You can only increase your tax bill by 3% year over year, and that's fantastic. I could almost see, and this is bigger scale, like would them saying, okay, instead of doing a 3% cap, we're going to let it continue to go with market, and every year that you're in, we'll increase from 50,000 to 55 to buy, like we'll increase that percentage of the savings so that you're more in line. You're still getting a savings for being in the home every year, but you're more in line with where the actual tax bill is and that tax revenue. Because I feel like the Supreme Court, and I get where you're like, hey, we got to get a singular decision to make sure we're all in lockstep. But I feel like this is a play on, there's a bigger purpose in why they want to make this justification. And now this gives them a reason to go back and look at, well, it's going to cost way too much to go back and police this and to patrol this. Do we need to change the rules of how we apply Homestead and how it works? And I could see it being a tipping point. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but this is that catalyst that I feel can be like, well, let's lay it all out there and let's look at it and see if Homestead is the best thing for the state of Florida.
Yep. It very well could be. And it just opens a can of worms for a lot of questions. A lot of questions, especially with the way, we've got the Airbnb economy now. Yeah. So like I said, what I'm going to try and do is reach out over the next week or so and see if we can't sit down and speak with one of the county property appraisers just to see, hey, what's your feeling on this? Have you even had a chance to even, digest it and absorb it yet? Yeah.
What could be, and see if we can get a little bit bigger sense. I'm going to try to connect with some of the Florida Housing Board members and see what their stance on this is. Right? See if they put some consideration into this. Like, this is one of those things where it's going to have a ripple effect and people are going to have to start talking about it. So I'm curious what it's going to look like.
Yep. Very true. Very true. Well, other news that we had is yesterday, CPI numbers came out.
Yep.
And actually, overall, wasn't too bad. So we came in at 5%. So we still have inflation. It's lower, but we still have inflation. And the markets really were kind of all over the place yesterday with it.
A lot of movement.
I didn't get a chance to see the 10-year T, but I know I saw the dollar actually took a dive early in the morning, kind of recovered some, which is surprising. Silver and gold both took a nice spike up yesterday. So, and rates actually got a little relief yesterday.
Yep. A little bit. Well, it's kind of weird yesterday because it's like we started the day like in way positive, like the markets reacted super strong, loved the news up, and then it quickly dissipated and went away. And then we were in negative territory, but we ended up finishing in slightly positive territory on the course of the day. And today we opened up in positive territory, but I think part of that was PPI numbers came in, Producers Price Index, which measures like wholesale inflation, came in, and they were down 0.5%, which they expected them to be flat. So that means that PPI decreased. I think year over year is like a 2.2% decrease. So we're at 2.7 on the PPI. Does that, and that's price index for wholesale, right? For wholesale, right? Like, does that mean we'll see that bumped over to us on the consumer side? Probably not. Maybe. And then we also saw this morning, we saw unemployment initial jobless claims come out, which I'm looking at it. Was 239,000 for last week.
Oh, so that's up.
An increase of 11,000 from the unrevised report of 228,000, which was above expectations. So continuing claims did decrease by 13,000 though. So that's kind of a little bit like, okay, maybe people are finding jobs. And I think maybe are people finding jobs, or are they fading out where they're no longer eligible? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of a little bit of a mix. I love how it's like, oh, we're going to revise them worse, but then we're going to show this new number and be like, hey, but it's actually better. Like less people are on continuing, but we had more new claims. Like I always think that's entertaining when there's bad news, they always try to find a little good news to throw in there too.
Yes. Yeah. It was interesting because I actually had a conversation. Client and good friend of mine owns a wine distributorship, both in Florida and in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And all his distributors are, saying the same thing: is discretionary spending is pulling back. What they're finding is people aren't experimenting with different like wines, different alcohols. What they're doing is they've actually kind of pulled back their purchasing, and it's more of a standard. This is what standard purchase than previously, and spending has gone down quite a bit, which is to be expected because inflation has been rather tough over the past year was about a year and a half now. So, and the other interesting thing I read was that many economists feel that the Fed's increase in rates take about a year to hit. So our first jump was about 13 months ago. So I think we are really starting to see those increase in rates are really going to start to take effect going through the summer. So it's been interesting to watch. And hopped on this morning because I love watching this, is the Fed Watch tool. What's the percent, what are people betting? And this morning we actually lost about 7% of people betting on a quarter point increase. Yesterday we were sitting about 70%. Today it's dropped back to about 63. And it'll be interesting to watch this going into tomorrow with the unemployment numbers that came out today, and as you said, the producer price index that came out today. Are we going to start seeing this level off to where it's a 50-50 chance that they're going to increase prices? I think overall they really have started to slow down the economy. Yeah. And this is where the balancing comes into effect. It's like, do you do that extra quarter and really push us over the edge, or do you kind of hold? I think one of the big things to look at is the amount of bank lending that's going on. Yeah. The banks have shut down lending. They've dropped. March was the biggest drop in commercial lending. And I can't remember how many years, but they basically dropped about $105 billion off their lending. Right after, Silicon Valley, the banks just tightened up. Just pulled those reins really tight. So in the commercial market, we went overnight to having, a moderate, a good amount of lending going on to, absolutely nothing.
It definitely crazy. on that side, and that's kind of like a lead indicator, right? Like
Mhm.
that, like what we see on commercial, sometimes it kind of leads, it precedes what we're going to see in
In
housing,
the residential.
in the residential.
It's interesting because I remember, I can't remember when you sent it to me, but wasn't Fannie and Freddie going to do some price adjustments on conventional loans? They were going to lower the adjustment percentage, and they delayed it.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, so Fannie and Freddie were getting ready to add like loan level price adjustments, and they were going to be very specific to kind of like loan to value and credit score, like so how much people were putting down in their credit, and it was kind of like it was interesting because when you looked at it, it was kind of rewarding people. It was kind of like, hey, like people in that in between from 3% to like 19%, like less than 20%. Those were the bulk of the people impacted. Right, like those were the areas that we were seeing more of those adjustments happening, where pricing and rates were getting worse. We're going to be worse in. Then they kind of delayed it, and I think they delayed it because just that a little bit of impact with rates going up. It's like you couldn't do it again. Well, I'm curious what'll happen because rates have kind of come back a little bit. They delayed it. I forget the timeline. I think it's, delayed till summer at some point. I don't think they'll delay it again if rates stay where they're at. They'll probably be like, we'll take it, right? Which just means that little bump up again, and, it'll see rates, bump up maybe an 1/8% or the cost bump up. But that's the hard part. It's crazy is we live in a time now where bars, it's like you got to expect to pay discount points.
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of what it is, especially on the investment and second home side. There's no not paying points. Like that side, you're paying.
Gotcha. Well, let's hop in to our numbers for the week for Orlando. We'll go back to, there it is. And we saw a little bit of a pullback on number of sales. The week previous, we had 519 single families, and we pulled back to still over 400. So we're holding above the average right now of number of homes for sale. But we're still that inventory. It's like, that water torture where they're just dripping, pulling away, slowly and surely pulling away that inventory. We went down another 100 homes, and people are starting to see we're going to get back into multiple offer situations coming up this spring if we can't get that inventory up at all.
That's going to be
kind of interesting because we always look at that original list to sales price, and you see average rise. We're holding at that 94% and the 97. But when you look at the 400 to 500 range, which is a good portion, probably majority of homes right now, you're seeing that drop to 98%. So again, with inventory tightening up, there's less room to move. Where you're seeing the biggest negotiation is actually in the luxury market.
Yeah.
Everything over $1 million, people are adjusting, they're coming off pretty good.
Yeah, because those higher rates really impact those loans.
Yeah, exactly. And look at their days on market. They're 70 days on market as opposed to 45 days for the $400,000 to $500,000 range. That's half a month on the market.
Yeah.
So this is coming down, and that's what's happened to pull the average days listing the contract down to 55. We're slowly moving down. It's that where the majority of the homes are and what people are looking at, they're moving quicker. Then we just see our weekly sales. Here it is in the bar graph, is we're holding above since February. We're holding above that 400 mark. But this is where, we're into mid-April right now, and going into May, you would expect this to jump to probably around 600 homes.
But do we have the inventory to support that?
I don't think we do. I don't think we do. If we do, what we're going to see is we're going to see that average price, I think, jump up.
Okay.
I think we'll end up seeing that average price jump up. I don't think we'll see the completely nuts biddings that we had last year, where you're going $50,000 over value. I think they may go 5 or 10, but again, you're also got a much higher payment than you've had in the past.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to stomach paying a lot more than ask when your rate is a 2.99 or a 3.15.
Yeah. I mean, not going to make that much difference in my payment. Well, even at 6%, it's going to.
Yeah.
And then here we are on our average days on market is, we're with the inventory slowing, we're moving down. So we've gone from a peak of about 64, 66 in February. Well, it was kind of slow because we've just gone through that price spike. Then we've knocked off, 13 days from the peak. So it's pulling, continues to pull it down. And then this is the one that just really hurts. It's total actives. We're down almost 17.5% since January 1st.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's still dropping.
And it's still dropping. Give us 1 or 2 weeks where we pop up 100 or 200.
That'll help.
Something to pull it up.
Yeah, and I wonder, there's so many different catalysts that are playing that, right? It's, rates being where they are, people not having, but then it's like, okay, well, people that would list to sell are like, wait, there's nothing for me to buy. So, I was talking to a client that I pre-approved, and she was like, until I find the property that I want, I'm not going to list my property.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to move.
Yep.
And she's like, my rate is this. It's super aggressive. It's this. I know, it's a want to move into something else, to upsize to a different type of property. But is it a need? No. And because of that, she's able to decide and say, okay, I'm going to sit back and see. I'm going to try to time it up to where I see what I want. Then I pull the trigger.
Then you pull the trigger, and the market's tight enough that you can do that. You can do that because if you present it right, you can still get that home sold in a weekend.
Yep.
It's clean. It's relatively up to date. The small minor maintenance things have been taken care of.
Yep.
You can do that. I mean, we've had really good traction on open houses. And then in our condo market, same thing is, you're seeing the final list of sales price tighten up overall. And their inventory is doing the same thing as ours is. As the single family homes is.
Yep.
It's just continually dropping. Not as quickly, but it's dropping. It hasn't done that push back up that we need to see. So that's our market. Very interesting. We'll try and do some continued follow up with the both property appraisers and, as you said, Joe, the Florida
housing. Yep.
Florida housing, to see how they're gonna react to it, because it could change the way a lot of people do certain things with their homes overall.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you again next Thursday. Take care.
Have a good one, guys.